Good evening, I'm Soraya, and this is Inside News Weekly for Sunday, October 26, 2025. This week brought political shifts, humanitarian emergencies, and diplomatic fractures across continents. We examine the stories that demand attention. We begin with tonight's major developments. In Sudan, 4 UN agencies issued urgent warnings about El-Fasher in Darfur, where the Rapid Support Forces maintain a siege. More than 250,000 civilians remain trapped. Half are children, without humanitarian access or medical facilities. The agencies report deliberate targeting of hospitals and camps, with famine conditions now catastrophic. 30 million people need urgent assistance. The UN's $4.2 billion appeal for 2025 received only 25% funding. On October 20th, over 1,500 civilians fled as cholera and measles spread through camps. Nigeria saw violent suppression of pro-Biafra demonstrations in Abuja on October 20th. Security forces deployed tear gas, water cannons, and armored vehicles. Dozens were arrested, more than 20 injured, including 2 Agence France-Presse journalists and Nnamdi Kanu's lead attorney. Côte d'Ivoire held presidential elections on October 25th under tension. President Alassane Ouattara, 83, sought a 4th term, with main opposition figures excluded through judicial decisions. Voter turnout was notably low. Post-electoral violence erupted in Cameroon following the October 12th vote. Provisional results showed Paul Biya, 92, and in power since 1982, winning with 53%. The opposition rejected results. At least 2 died in protests. Authorities intensified repression with arrests and internet shutdowns. We move now to Europe. European leaders gathered in London on October 24th for the Coalition of the Willing Summit. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky led the meeting without President Trump's participation. The summit addressed Russia's campaign against Ukraine's energy infrastructure. Washington refused to deliver Tomahawk missiles to Kyiv, creating a strategic gap. European leaders emphasized filling this void with their own capabilities. On October 23rd, the EU adopted its 19th sanctions package targeting Russian oil giants and circumvention entities in China and India. Ireland experienced historic political shift. Independent left-wing candidate Catherine Connolly won the October 24th presidential election with 63.4%, defeating center-right candidate Heather Humphreys. The 68-year-old former lawyer unified a rare coalition including Sinn Féin. Analysts interpret it as a collapse of centrist parties rather than a left-wing wave. Turnout reached a historic low of 45.8%. In France, 4 men stole French crown jewels valued between 88 and 102 million euros from the Louvre on October 19th in 7 minutes. 2 suspects from Seine-Saint-Denis were arrested October 26th, one at Charles de Gaulle Airport, attempting international flight. Authorities transferred remaining jewels to underground vaults at the Bank of France on October 24th. Turning to the Americas, relations between the United States and Colombia collapsed. President Trump announced suspension of all aid, accusing President Gustavo Petro of laxity toward drug trafficking. On October 24th, the U.S. Treasury imposed personal sanctions on President Petro, his wife, his son, and his interior minister. This ends decades of planned Colombia alliance. Petro rejected these slanders, called Trump ignorant, and announced hiring American lawyers. Bolivia completed political transition when Rodrigo Paz Pereira of the center-right Christian Democratic Party won the presidency with 55% in the October 19th runoff. This ended 2 decades of governance by the movement towards socialism. Analysts attribute the defeat to party implosion from internal divisions rather than a conservative wave. Hurricane Melissa carved a destructive path through the Caribbean starting October 22nd. particularly affecting Hispaniola and Jamaica, causing deaths, massive flooding, and water outages. The storm reached Jamaica as a Category 1 or 2 hurricane on October 25th. The U.S. government shutdown entered its 25th day as President Trump departed for Asia on October 26th for ASEAN and APEC summits. Critics accused him of prioritizing international commitments over domestic problems. Our focus shifts to the Middle East. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance traveled to Israel for emergency diplomacy to preserve the fragile Gaza ceasefire. The agreement, effective since October 10th, faced threats from violations, including Israeli airstrikes that killed 26 Palestinians. During the visit, Israel's parliament held a symbolic vote favoring West Bank annexation. Vance condemned this as an insult and a very stupid political stunt, exposing tensions between the Trump administration and hardline Israeli government elements. Pakistan and Afghanistan agreed to immediate ceasefire during Doha talks on October 19th, following violent border clashes marking the worst violence since the Taliban's 2021 takeover. Delegations plan to meet October 25th in Istanbul. Next, developments in Asia-Pacific. China's 20th Central Committee concluded its 4th plenum in Beijing. The October 20th to 23rd session adopted proposals for the 15th five-year plan, guiding the country from 2026 to 2030. With economic slowdown and real estate crisis, the plan emphasizes national security and resilience over GDP growth, while addressing the demographic crisis. Japan experienced a historic moment on October 21st when Sanae Takaichi was elected prime minister. She becomes the first woman to reach government head in Japan's history. Japanese authorities confirmed the season's first major avian influenza outbreak, H5 strain, detected October 22nd in Shiraioi City, Hokkaido. Emergency response ordered culling of 459,000 laying hens. A 10-kilometer transport ban affected 4 additional farms and 620,000 more birds. Thailand entered national mourning following Queen Mother Sirikit's death on October 24th at age 93. She was mother of current King Vajiralongkorn and wife of late King Bhumibol Adulyadej. A year-long funeral ceremony began October 26th. The country observes 90 days of mourning. Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim opened the 47th ASEAN Summit in Kuala Lumpur on October 26th. The summit hosts global leaders, including President Trump, Chinese Premier Li Qiang, and Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi. Crucial U.S.-China trade negotiations occurred in Malaysia from October 24th to 27th, described as very constructive. President Trump and Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese signed a historic agreement at the White House on October 20th, an $8.5 billion investment pipeline to jointly develop critical minerals and rare earths. This aims to secure Western supply chains and counter China's monopoly. Trump reaffirmed full steam ahead U.S. support for the AUKUS submarine pact. The events of this week remind us that consequential journalism requires examining the substance. The sanctions reshaping alliances, the humanitarian crises demanding response, the political transitions redirecting nations. At Inside News Weekly, we remain committed to covering stories that matter. The world's complexity deserves scrutiny, context, and accountability. With good journeys to all, good night.